morning, everyone. Thanks for having me down. I always enjoy coming to Vista. And I wanted to mention that, oh, my batteries. Oh, there we go. Sandy mentioned how quickly time flies. She mentioned Thanksgiving, I think, and Christmas, but she didn't mention Halloween. Halloween is almost here. And I think for me, not so much Labor Day, but Halloween is when I finally realized, oh my gosh, you know, it's not summer anymore. And I'm working on my costume right now for the OCBC costume party. We don't call it a Halloween party, we call it a costume party. It's under wraps. I will unveil it on the 29th. And my daughter is in musical theater, so it's kind of nice. She knows how to stage and costume design, so she's helping me. So it's kind of nice. I have my own director. So I've had this Dharma Talk in one of my folders on my Mac for years, and I always intended to give it at Halloween, but for some reason or another I was, you know, I don't know, I didn't get to speak in October for a couple years, or I spoke early in October, or I could have just forgot. But I'm speaking on October 15th today at Vista, and I'm speaking on October 22nd at OCBC, and Halloween is fast approaching, so I thought I'd bring this is like wine. This has been aging for, I probably did this like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's been sitting on a file. There's a bunch of Dharma Talks on my computer, and every once in a while, like, I come across one and go, oh, I should use that. So Reverend taught me, every time I have an idea about a Dharma Talk, you compose it at the moment, and then you just keep it, and when you're ready, you pull it off the shelf, rather than like panicking late Saturday night. And I'm a type A, right? So I like to do things, you know, in advance. But the only bad thing about this is when you bring it back out, you use it, you can't remember what you were thinking when you designed it. And I'm like, why did I put this? What does this slide mean? Why did I put this here? So first I want to show you, this is what I look like in my everyday life when I'm not a minister. This is me developing Dharma Talks and doing emails. So you don't know this, but I'm Batman. So one year I went as Batman. So that's me in my house. That's my kitchen back there. See how serious I am? And then a couple years ago, Linda and I went as Mrs. and Mr. Captain America. And when I was a little boy, Captain America was my favorite superhero. And it's not because he has a movie or cartoons or comic books. I just really liked his shield and his outfit. You know, like when you're like 6 or 7, I just think he has the best outfit. So I told, and Linda let me buy the shield. Like she said, look, we bought the costume. It was like $50. You really don't need a shield. And I was at the Halloween store going, with all the other ones, I gotta have the shield, I gotta have it. So she got the little shield, and she got the little shield, I got the big shield. And this is actually, I'm just wearing Lycra here. This is the way I look. This is my, like you don't see this because I'm wearing robes, but this is just a tight blue and red, white, and blue shirt. So. And then last year, this was really great. I've started to do this thing where I just want to make my costumes instead of buying them. And there's something they do at Disneyland. I can't remember what the name is, but Emily told me if you dress up like Snow White and go to Disneyland, you can get in trouble. You're not allowed to be in a Disney costume at Disneyland unless you're an employee. So they do this thing now where they'll, I forget what it's called, but they'll have like a couple elements of the character. Like maybe like a red, like if you were gonna be Bert from Mary Poppins, you might have like a red handkerchief, you might wear black Levi's, and you might have a cap. So it's very subtle, but I forget what they call it, but you wear like 2 or 3 elements, and you're like riffing on the character, but you can't get in trouble because you're not really in full character. So Linda and I put this together. This is Nick Fox, that's me, Nick Fox, and she's Judy Hopps from the movie Zootopia. Yeah. And all the kids knew immediately what this was. And like, this is kind of this idea, if you have a lime green shirt, and you have a crazy colored tie, and you have some ears, I mean, everybody knows you're Nick Fox, even though you're not officially in costume. So I could have worn this to Disneyland if you wanted to. So back to my talk. This talk is about scary music. That's why I titled it this. And I wanted to share a couple scary songs from when I was really young and relatively young. So this first song used to scare the bejeebers out of me when I was like 5 years old. So most young people won't recognize this song, but this song scared me to death when I was a little kid. You know what this is? Yeah, it's Perry Mason. So this is one of those Dharma talks where I'm hitting different, different age groups. So that's Perry Mason. I don't know why, but that song just scared me to death. And I didn't know what night it came on because I was like 5. But whatever night it was, when that theme song came on, I went running into my mom's arms. That song really freaked me out. And this is another song that's more modern that gives me the heebie-jeebies too. So you know what song that is?
Yes. Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin. I don't run to my mom when I hear this song. I run to Linda. I don't like that song. It's too scary. So I want to talk about scary music in Buddhism. Scary masks, scary ideas. This is a Halloween Buddhist Dharma talk. So this is, I don't think I could wear this to the Halloween party, but this is like one of the great scary masks of Buddhism. So this is Yama, a really, really scary beast. And he's got like a crown of skulls, and he's got like, it looks like he's got, his eyebrows are on fire. He's got kind of like a pig nose. He's got, I don't know, wolf teeth. He's all red. His eyes are really scary. So he's like the most frightening character, I think, in Buddhism, and I think this would be a great Buddhist Halloween costume. But I looked on the internet and I couldn't find it. And then I wanted to show you this. This is kind of scary Tibetan music, and I wanted to show you a picture of this. These are Tibetan symbols that they use when they play Tibetan Buddhist music. And the thing I thought was kind of funny about this is this guy must have a cold because he has one of those
masks.
So he must have the flu. But anyway, and they used a lot of drums and a lot of cymbals. So like at our Hondo dedication, we had that gagaku music. So Japanese have that as well, Buddhist music that we use at services. So at our Hondo dedication, they played a recording of gagaku music, and the children came in, Ochigo, in costumes. And so we have that tradition as well. So Buddhism has a rich tradition of music. And sometimes it's scary and sometimes it's not. And then these are the giant Tibetan horns that they use. And then the other thing I've teased Reverend about is that I think one of the things that Tibetan Buddhism has on us is they just have way better hats than we do. So, I'm being a little facetious, but we don't have cool hats.
Looks to me like I knocked off the Greeks and Romans.
Yeah. So anyway, I always admire their hats. Then I wanted to show you. So here's a little boy that's kind of curious about these horns, and I wanted you to hear some of this music. you really need a lot of bass, right? You need a really good bass speaker. So, this is, from a Western point of view, this almost doesn't seem like music, right? There's no melody, there doesn't seem to be a beat, but this is Buddhist music, and it sounds, well, I have like a bunch of CDs and I have a bunch of stuff on my iPhone, and when this song comes up every once in a while, I mean, it's really out of the ordinary. It's very unusual sounding music. And so, in the Buddhist tradition, at least with these examples, they're trying to represent this character in Buddhism, but through sound. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit. So this character is kind of, I'm rolling out the context, but this character represents impermanence. So this is Yama, and the reason it's so frightening is that most people don't want to deal with death, and they don't want to face change, and we hang on to control and imagine control. And growing older, having things change quickly can be very, very frightening and very, very scary. And that's what this represents. So it kind of represents this. It's the negative side of Buddhism, but it's really the negative side of life that we just don't want to deal with it. And then the other thing that's really neat is you have an alternative here. You have the historical Buddha pointing with his finger to the moon, and here's Amida Buddha in the Pure Land, and then here's a lot of people practicing Buddhism and saying Namo Amida Butsu and bowing at Vista. That's what this is right here. So this is very frightening, but the Buddhist teachings is giving us an alternative. So this is all going on in this Buddhist imagery. And this comes from, this is called the Wheel of Life. I really like this. I used to use this a lot when I taught Introduction to Buddhism. So here's Yama. This is impermanence, and he's big, and he's angry. And this is the Wheel of Life. And on the outside is the 12-link chain of causation. And this is relatively complicated, and I've read multiple scholars try to explain it. But basically, it's kind of the stages of life. Or you could think of it, the stages of your consciousness. You could either take it literally, as you're a baby, you get older, you start to grasp, and then as you get older, you begin to hunch over, and then you die. So you could look at it literally, or you could look at it the way the mind develops consciousness and has ideas. Ideas are born, they mature, they fade. So you could take it two different ways. And then in here is the 6 realms. We talk about this a lot. There's the fighting demons, the angry ghosts, the human realm, the diva realm, the animal realm. And you can't really see it here, but what's really interesting about this is, again, you could take this literally where you go when you die, but you could also take it as these are the realms that your mind goes through daily, right? You get angry, you're very human, logical, and rational. You're very instinctive and reactive like an animal. So that's the way I've been taught. And no matter what state of mind you're in, there's 6 of them up here. You can see the Buddha is in each one of these realms. So Buddhism's still available to you in each one of these realms. So even when you're at your greatest despair, there's still a chance for awakening. And then this little circle here represents karma. And then in here, there is the 3 poisons are ignorance, anger, and greed. And ignorance is represented by a pig. And in America, that's not the animal we would pick, because pigs are very intelligent. But supposedly in India, I guess pigs they'll eat, like if something's on the ground, they'll just eat it, and then they'll realize, oh no, that was, a rock. So it represents ignorance. So somehow the pig got labeled with, different cultures kind of personify animals in different ways. So in India, pigs were considered, that's an ignorant behavior. And then snakes, this makes sense in our culture too, they're angry, like a rattlesnake. So snake represents anger. And then a lot of times they say that this is a chicken, but I read it's some kind of Indian bird that I never heard of. But basically it's birds that have talons that grasp, because it represents grasping, greed. So it has to be a bird like a hawk or an eagle. I don't think chickens can grasp. So really a rooster, usually they say it's a rooster. I never understood, why is a rooster the symbol for greed? Like I don't think of roosters as being greedy. I think of being grumpy. So you have to like kind of put yourself in India and figure out why they chose these animals, but it's the grasping bird. And then they even have these great schematics on the internet. So I tried to find one that looked a lot like the one I just showed. And so here you have the Buddha pointing to the moon or awakening. And you have Yama representing impermanence. And when you're unenlightened, when you're living in this world, this is incredibly frightening. But when you live kind of in this world, it becomes dynamic, positive. It's what gives life its adventure and excitement. And so there again, there's the 12 links of causation, the 6 realms. So you have kind of the realm where you're feeling very spiritual. Human realm is where you're very rational. Hungry ghosts is where you're very greedy. The hell realm is where you're full of despair. This isn't Christian hell. It's when you feel very depressed and you have a lot of despair. And the animal realm, if I've been told, is very instinctual. You know, like my dog. Well, my dog's not that instinctual. When I try to give Madigan a treat, like when Linda gives it to her, she just eats it. But when I give it to her, she sniffs it for like 5 seconds and then goes, okay, it's not bad. It's not medicine, it's not poison, and then she eats it. So she doesn't really trust me as much as she trusts Linda. And then here's fighting demons. This is when you're very angry. And then karma, and then the 3 poisons. So I wanted to play for you another, I was at work one day, and I have a CD of Tibetan chants. And they're all very beautiful. And I'm listening to this one, and they're chanting, and all of a sudden the horrendous music comes in at the end. And it's this interplay between chanting, awakening, the finger pointing to the moon, and then you have this terrible sounding cacophony at the end representing our attachments and our fear of impermanence. So I think that's really interesting. You know, when I was at work, I thought, why in the world would they play that terrible, you know, it sounds like things falling over in your garage, you know, but it represents this fear, this innate terror of growing older. So like, I didn't really go through a midlife crisis at 40, but I did kind of go through one where my kids went away to college, because like suddenly I'm not a father anymore, and then like I'm not that far away from 60. And I'm only at midlife if I live to 120. So, you know, I'm a math major. I can do the math, right? I can do the math. Yeah. If you multiply my age by 2, I'm probably not going to live that long. I'm way past midlife now. So, you know, you start to think about things, and you can get really frightened, or you can begin to really treasure the time you have. And my daughter, this was interesting, a couple days ago, she sent me a picture of Bill Murray, the comedian from Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day. And I love my daughter, she's wonderful, but she blurts, she's a blurter. And she sent me a picture of Bill Murray, and she said, oh my gosh, what is wrong with Bill Murray? He looks awful. And I looked at the picture and I sent back to her, he's old. That's all. That's all that happened. He's just gotten older. I told her I'm getting older too. But she told me I'm still super handsome. I don't look like Bill Murray, but he's way older than I am. So I kind of wanted to show you this. It can be really scary. You know, scary things can be really scary, or we can focus on scary things and find deeper meaning and transcend the scariness. And I really like this picture. There's this scary little jack-o'-lantern winking his eye at you, right? Everything's okay. Everything's okay. So in our culture, we tend to want to focus on the positive, right? But we're going to talk about this in adult study, but I've brought this book before, The Antidote, Happiness for People Who Can't Stand Positive Thinking. And it's an idea that, and this is practiced a lot in Buddhism and in other cultures, that if you focus on things that frighten you, it actually can give you depth and meaning in life. So actually coming to terms with dying can make your relationships more intense. You connect with people. Life is precious and something that should be savored. And maybe you're less on autopilot and everything is precious. So there's actually a very positive benefit to focusing on these things that scare us, and that psychologically, by trying to push them away or trying to over-control our lives, actually leads to anxiety and a lot of the obsessive-compulsive disorders and checking disorders. And so from a Buddhist point of view, we really want to not ignore or push away the negative, and we want to have a full life where we embrace positive and negative and find deeper meaning. And I think we don't have very many holidays like this in America. I think Memorial Day might be one. And we usually focus on soldiers. But in the Buddhist tradition, we kind of turn that into a memorial. It's a day for memorializing relatives and friends and soldiers. So we've kind of broadened the holiday. And then you have something like Halloween. I think I was a traditionalist when I was a kid. I didn't want to go as something happy. I always wanted to go as something scary. So, because Halloween, I always thought, it's a time for goblins and ghouls, and it's kind of the dark side that we kind of focus on for that one night. And in my neighborhood, I think there's some fundamentalist Christians who really don't like Halloween. They see it as a pagan holiday, and maybe we're celebrating, the dark side. And I don't remember now, but Linda showed it to me in our neighborhood when I was walking the dog with her like 10 years ago. Certain houses had like these orange signs, and I can't remember what it was written on, like a black circle or something. And that meant that house is not celebrating Halloween. And I didn't know that, but a lot of the houses, the lights are out, and if you see the sign, it's kind of a Halloween protest that we don't honor that holiday. But I think it's an important holiday. I think it's important to reflect on these things. And you get candy. So please join me in Gasho. Namo Amitabha. Namo Das. Namo Das. Thank you.